Okay, good morning and welcome to CRE and Deal Junkie. And today we've got a special guest. Before we introduce Wes, I am your host, Troy Moliot. I'm a broker, investor, appraiser, developer, and a property manager. And we are talking to you about all of the different issues and nuances of commercial real estate here in the Puget Sound and throughout the U.S. And today, my guest is Wes Herman. And Wes is the founder and CEO of Woods Coffee, a family-owned retail coffee company in the Puget Sound. Wes was an entrepreneur at a very early age and has several commercial endeavors, with Woods being his most valued venture. And I believe it's because he started it with his family. And we'll hear more about that here later. And Wes, thanks for being here.
Hey, my pleasure. Glad to join you.
We have known each other for a while. I was trying to think how long it's been. 15 years, 16 years? It's been
Probably
a while.
something like that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Some of the best years of my life knowing you.
Wow. I paid you for that. So thank you.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I'll send you a Woods card in the mail. So full disclosure, Wes and I have had a business relationship and more so probably a friendship. And but Wes is what's the E stand for in CEO? Is that chief entertainment officer, chief enthusiast? What does the E stand for?
I love that. Well, that's a great question, but I think it can be all of the above.
Yeah, agreed. I love it. You enjoy what you do, and I think that is awesome. So, Wes, you have about 19 Woods Coffee locations. They range in size from 1,500 feet to 2,000 feet. Most of them are drive-throughs. You have a few non-drive-throughs. And you are constantly expanding, and you have done very well with your locations and what you've done as a family. Tell me a little bit about why you did what you did back in the early 2000s. I believe it was 2002 when you started Woods. Tell me a little bit about the why.
Yeah. Well, the why was that we were homeschooling 4 children, and I was traveling the country selling a product into the coffee industry. Come home on the weekends. My kids were all drinking coffee, loved coffee. And one weekend, my wife said, why don't we start a coffee shop? And I said, I got a better idea. Why don't we teach our kids how to write a business plan? And we did, all around starting a coffee shop. And then it allowed us to keep our family together as a unit and really indoctrinate them into coffee at an early age and business in a much bigger way, so that they would find interest and something that we collectively like doing.
Awesome. So a homeschool business class went viral, and now it's 20 stores and booming, at least up until the current situation and such. And we'll talk about that and get into that here a little bit. So, wow, that's exciting. What's your philosophy in business?
Our business is founded around serving others, and that comes from a deep-seated part of our own family life, where we serve each other. We're committed to each other, and the outgrowth of that is how could we create an environment that allowed others to enjoy what we do, and we enjoy serving those folks. And it's the 3 things that we point to is we like to serve others, we like to make a difference, and we like to have fun. And so if we can achieve all 3 of those kind of at the same time, and then everybody wins, right? Our guests are happy and enjoying what we're doing, and we derive a great sense of accomplishment out of that.
Yeah. And for those of you that have never seen a Woods store, this is, I've got a couple of pictures here. You've got a lot of quotes from John Muir. Come to the Woods, for here is rest. I believe that's maybe your Barclay store there. And then this is also another good picture of what a Woods coffee store looks like. Why the Northwest feel? Why that particular style of store?
Mm-hmm. Well, you referenced the John Muir quote there, and that's really near and dear to my heart because as a middle schooler and into my high school years, I backpacked all the John Muir trails, and so it was a part of my life and a big part of those years of growing up and fly fishing the streams and doing all that stuff that is so magical. But it was really my 19-year-old daughter at the time when we were starting that said, "Hey, Dad, why don't we call it Woods Coffee and we'll theme it around the Pacific Northwest?" And in those days, the PNW as a brand didn't exist. That wasn't a name. It wasn't the cool factor. You didn't see people from California dressing like they came from PNW. It was, like we were up here in the Northwest, so nobody really knew who we were. So we themed it around that woodsy type of Northwest, what we call Northwest. And if you're in the east part of the United States, you probably call it the Northeast look. It could be just about anywhere, but there is a warmth and a common place where people just enjoy being around a fireplace that we kind of develop and create for people, and they tend to enjoy that warm, cozy feel. But yes, it was my daughter who really came up with the name.
Yeah, we talk a lot about destination-oriented retail, and clearly, your store is very destination-oriented. Most of your stores have drive-through, although there's a few in unique circumstances where they don't or they can't, so to speak. Let's talk about the 800-pound gorilla, or the current situation here, because COVID-19, state of Washington is shut down. How are you as a business owner coping with the current situation? And one of your landlords is on the call, so and this is really the epic battle right now that we're all in is really commercial real estate, and as landlords, as tenants, a banker, we're all in it together. We're making a lot of this up as we go, but how are you as a business owner dealing with this today?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting. We have 19 locations. 15 of them are operational at this point, and with the preponderance of those being, activity that happens in the drive-through. The drive-through is, for anybody who's in the restaurant business that does not have that capacity, it's really hard. And I feel for all those friends of mine who are restaurateurs that their stores are completely shut down, or they're got takeout and it's minimal compared to what they normally do. In our world, the drive-through has really saved us. It's allowed us to push everything through the drive-through, and it's not that we've got 100% of our normal activity. We're adjusting to things that are we're probably down 30-35% depending on the store and location, and some locations are absolutely crushing it and setting records for how many cars they're pushing through a drive-through. And some one location in particular, we have a Chick-fil-A looking drive-through line, which is really exciting. And people are giving us a lot of grace right now. If you have to sit 15 minutes in a drive-through lane, nobody's complaining, right? This is the highlight of their day to get out and get a cup of coffee. So it's really unique and gratifying to see how people embrace this current time of their life and really make the most of it. But what will probably be most interesting to the people that are on the call and anybody who's watching this is, how do we adjust and get to a place of even breaking even, right? If we can just get to a place of breaking even, then maybe we can, see our way through this to, have a sustainable business that we can build on in whatever that new business model looks like. And so, we've had landlords that have abated rent completely, and we have landlords that have deferred rent and or portions of rent. And then we've kind of settled on a model with a lot of our landlords, though, where we are paying 7% of our gross sales.
Hmm.
And that seems to be a model that has worked really well for us. And I early on, I think I mentioned to you that I can't fathom being a landlord and someone who is used to collecting rents and paying banks and doing all the stuff you got to do, and then to have that that faucet turned off. And so we're wanting to be reasonable. And most landlords are also wanting to be reasonable with us. So that's probably the great thing of a business example of how things would work is if you can negotiate something that works between you and your landlord. And having 19 landlords, it's taken a little while to negotiate each one and see what everybody's most interested in making happen. But that's typically what we've done.
Yeah, I mean, the consumer drives your business. And when the consumer is told to stay at home or isn't in their normal patterns or goes through a major shock or black swan event like we're going through, obviously the consumer being at the top affects your business, affects the ability to pay rent, affects commercial real estate, affects the banking system. I mean, it is a chain reaction. And so I think everyone is trying to make that up as we go. And a landlord doesn't win if they don't have tenants. And
Right.
so you are, as a landlord, and for those of you in the landlord business trying to figure things out, there are a lot of options out there for landlords, talking to their banks, working with them. Some banks are deferring, doing interest only, trying to work on softening the blow of making those payments to be able to give whatever credit they can to the tenant, because getting through this on the other side and back to whatever the new normal is really important. And we've seen all aspects of that. We've seen business landlords say, yes, here's 3 months, 6 months, a certain time period of free rent or reduced rent or whatever it might be. And maybe capturing some of that, maybe just foregoing the whole thing, depending on what they built up in reserves or worked out with their bank, and other landlords that have done the other scale that are, dare I say, trying to evict their tenants. And in my opinion, that's not a sustainable model. And I think everyone's feeling the pressure, but it's a win-win relationship for the landlord and the tenant, and they have to figure it out. And there's lots of unique circumstances. And so thanks for that. How do you think this situation is going to impact commercial real estate and maybe even lease rates in the future? Is it going to affect it positively or negatively? And it depends on how you're looking at it, whether you're landlord or tenant. So,
Well, from my perspective, I hope that it reduces rates and
yeah.
gets us to a better place. And when I say better, I don't know that it's better for me as a tenant, but I don't know that it's better for everyone. We view our relationships, by the way, with our landlords as partnerships. If we can't do our business correctly and have something that makes money, then it really doesn't benefit the landlord for us to go out of business, and then they have to put another tenant in, and so on and so forth. So at this juncture, when we have leases that are 10 and 15 years that we've been involved with landlords, and we paid our rents along the way, the landlords are much more lenient, right? It's been a great partnership, and they're willing to help us. I don't know what's going to happen. It's all going to depend on how many people go out of business. And as people go out of business, which is inevitable in times like these, then we're going to see some vacant spaces. And does that affect rates? I believe it will. And we're hopeful that we'll see opportunities, and we're gearing for those opportunities and trying to find places that we can leverage our way into either properties we've wanted to be in, or looking for businesses that may be failing that create opportunity for us.
Mm. And I'm hearing some themes from you. I mean, adaptability, obviously pushing everything through a drive-through. That's been, I'm sure, a blessing in disguise to a certain extent, because people do want to get out. They want to come to your business. And then at the same time, you've, I think, prepared yourself for maybe some of the unknown, or you have a philosophy of maybe not being as leveraged, or at least being prepared. And so adapting and looking for opportunities as this will bring, I think, will be really, really important. And so, and I know that that is on your mind. Survival probably at the top of that list as well, and making sure you can at least get to break even or work towards break even, and then move forward. So thank you for that. And maybe we'll transition a bit into what I really wanted to talk about, which is when you're looking for a location. So and I agree with you. I do think that rates are probably going to soften. I think there's going to be some people that are going to say, I don't really want to open back up. The PPP loans are only going to go so far for some of those business owners that are a one-off shop, and it's tough. It can be tough, and so there will be some failures. There will be some people that choose not to come back, but there will also be opportunities for other people to grow. So as you look at those opportunities, what would you say are maybe some of the top 3 or 5 items you look for or consider when you're looking for a new location for one of your stores?
It's a great question. We are not the stereotypical company that does a ton of research. And although the longer we go, the more research we do, and the deeper dive we take into making sure that locations are going to work. As an entrepreneur, it's more of a gut feel. And I'm turning over a lot of this work to my son, who's very detailed, and he's now building all the infrastructure of how we evaluate properties and things like that. But the things that are tried and true that don't change are things like we project. In fact, if I can go back for a second, we developed a go no go sheet, and I think I've shared this with you before and told you a little bit about it. And that go no go sheet has all the factors of a deal, right? And so if we're talking deal junkie here, we're talking about all the factors that go into our decision making process. And so we plug in the factors of tenant improvement allowance, lease rate, triple net, CAM, all the things that end up being factors that will be significant to us. And then we project what the sales are going to be. And those sales projections we're pretty good at this point. And in the early years, we were just guessing, and we didn't have the traction we do today. But now today we know, usually within, a very, maybe 5 to 10%, we nail the number as to what the revenue is going to be coming in on the top side. And then we can work all the numbers below that. So the first thing we look for is, what are our projected revenues at year 3? We're not looking at this at year 1. Year 1 has too many obstacles. Year 2, is usually a great time of growth. So by year 3, we're pretty stable. And if we can get to year 3, we know that it's going to be X, then all the other factors have to fall into place. And based on ours, our go no go sheet, which is a spreadsheet, then either lights up red or it lights up green. And then I try and tell my team, well, no, let's put some more on the sales side and see if we can get this to green. And it's a lot of fun. The other thing we look for is traffic count, and that's a big deal to us. Probably the number one thing that we are really intent on, because our business is really driven by people who want that convenience and are looking for those opportunities. So that's the next one. And then the third is, does it have a drive-through? The drive-through, now, man, if we didn't have drive-throughs and they're walk-up only stores, we may have jumped off the top of the building. But the drive-through is key. And then, are we on the AM drive side of traffic? our business is predominantly done in the mornings, and I would say 70% of our business is done before 11 o'clock in the morning. So AM drive side is critical to us. And most of our stores have some commuter aspect to them. And so we look for that. And then the fifth thing is what other businesses are around us. Is there cross contamination where people can, go to the hair salon, go to the pharmacy, and go to coffee? Are they meeting their insurance company? Or are they going to the gym? What are those factors that will allow us to piggyback? And because we have business that is something that everybody needs every day, we still like to be piggybacked onto another activity.
Yeah. That's great. I heard a lot of obviously things that we talk about or even teach and are looking at, obviously population, how many people are in a certain area, and that will drive the drive time traffic, how many people are coming by. And would you say there's a minimum amount of people? I know I get a lot of people that say, hey, this would be a great spot for a coffee spot, or this would be a great spot for woods. But you kind of want a minimum. I mean, 2,000 people going by a day here and there probably doesn't cut it, but maybe 15,000 people or more a day would. And so is there a certain hard and fast number on traffic counts that you like to see?
Yeah, we'd like to see a minimum of 20,000. And we would also like to see a signal. If people stop, that's a big deal. We could have 50,000 traffic count and a 50-mile-an-hour speed limit. That's not good, because nobody's going to slow down and nobody's going to pull in. So there's a relationship there between not only traffic count, but what are the other factors such as signal and or speed.
Yeah. And then I heard other things like co-tenancy. You talked about obviously having a drive-through location, and that's not just one or two cars that can stack. You need multiple cars, 7, 8, 10 cars or more that can stack, because if someone drives by your store and pulls in and they see only 3 people there and they can't actually park or stop and order, those are key pieces for locking in your clientele. And I know you've got a timer on what that clientele looks like. It might be a little bit longer and people have more grace today, but typically you want to get people ordered in and through in a certain timely fashion. And so for those of you that are looking at locations, and again, this is a great way for you to be able to understand inside of a retailer what they're looking for. Stackability is really, really good. Drive-through, we heard the AM side, so people on the going to work side of the street, literally crossing the median or crossing the street, may second guess someone for pulling in and buying a latte and a muffin or a breakfast sandwich, right?
Absolutely. And there's also another minor factor is, giving a little bit of a lifestyle feel on the outside of the building, so that people feel that, that looks really nice. Like I could see myself sitting outside under that umbrella, drinking a coffee, chatting with my friend. That's the kind of thing that are strong visuals. By the way, in our busiest location, which I was at yesterday, and I think we had close to 30 cars stacked. And it's remarkable that we actually have that ability on that property. But it was incredible. And I talked to the staff and I said, yeah, it just slowed down. So it was even more dramatic. And
Wow.
It's fun times.
Wow, that's great. That's wonderful. Well, I think that's great, and I'm sure you look at other factors like 1, 3, 5 mile radius of people, but again, more than just numbers on a map or general demographics. Drive-by traffic, stackability, obviously the inviting look of a coffee store is really important, and it's to a certain extent it's as you've said, come to the woods, for here is rest. People that want to get away, get out of their home, or looking for extension of their home, or for a place just to escape, have a meeting, have a dialogue with a business associate, a friend, family member, whatever that is. is really a lot of what Woods offers. And so, yeah. Why in your structures you typically have leased versus own, and would you talk about that as a business philosophy on why maybe leasing is more attractive than owning, or is owning something that you're looking at doing down the line?
Hmm. Yeah, that's always a great question. I was reminded as you were talking earlier that I'm old enough to go back to 1992 when there was a collapse in Southern California. And I was the guy, or one of the guys, that got left holding the bag with a ton of real estate in an economy that in a 6-month period, real estate values were cut in half. And so some of my philosophy and thinking now probably stems from that event, and not wanting to duplicate that again. And I would have to say that I'm really comfortable right now being in a tenant position rather than landlord position. There's two basic models though in the United States and in our space, and I would like to look at McDonald's and Starbucks. McDonald's being one of the largest landowners and Starbucks not owning anything. And so when we started our business, we were not highly capitalized. And so it wasn't an option for us to buy. And we also wanted that capital to be able to work for us to build new stores. And to this day, we believe that we can make more money by opening more stores than we can owning the real estate. That doesn't mean we wouldn't own real estate if we had the opportunity. We might consider that, and as we grow and get older and more mature in our business, we think, okay, well now we're 20 years in. Well, if we would have owned that, we'd probably own it now and not have to pay any rent or any mortgage. So those are the two philosophies, but we've stuck with the Starbucks philosophy, which is that we'd rather use our capital to build new stores than we would to own property.
Yeah, it does
And
come down to a growth
yeah,
opportunity, because I know Starbucks probably about 15 years ago made an initiative to say, "Hey, we're going to go out and start buying locations," and then they found that really difficult, and a lot of tenants find that capitally intensive, unless they've got big dollars coming in, and that's a big part of maybe what they want to do is own the real estate and enjoy some of those benefits of ownership. But it also has its drawbacks because it is capital intensive, and sometimes it's hard to own that premier corner that you're looking at, that's 20,000 ADT a day and in a prime area. Tough, and you're also competing with a lot of other QSRs, quick service retails and such, so that's got to be tough.
absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, we're looking for opportunities. We're here in the Northwest, and for those of you who are not from this area, we have a tough time carving out spaces in competition with Starbucks because they get all the prime real estate. They obviously bring a bigger cap rate to the landlord, and so we have to pick and choose and hope that they give up on a space, or for some reason we're able to shoehorn our way in.
Yeah, so landlords are always looking for the credit worthiness of a tenant, and somebody who's national or got 10, 20,000 locations obviously may drive a better cap rate or a lower cap rate, which is going to create a higher value. And so, yeah, landlords do consider those, but at the same time, Starbucks also shut down 1,000 stores here at the last Great Recession. They can pull their weight around, and so there are advantages and disadvantages. Someone like yourself who's got more than just one or two locations, almost 20, is a great medium to really large company for your market area. That said, you do compete with, you said the S word, Starbucks. How difficult is that competing with Starbucks? And you've mentioned to me before that they're almost kind of like your parent company to a certain extent. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, well, we value them because if they hadn't have blazed the trail and carved the space, we wouldn't be doing what we do today. and we had an opportunity to step into the market and do something at the right time. And the funny part was that when we first started, everybody said, "You're crazy. I mean, coffee is way oversaturated. There's no way that a new company can survive." And now 18 years later, you look and see that, we have doubled and tripled and quadrupled, the amount of coffee shops as we go. So yeah, we value them from that perspective. And they do a lot of things. They set different markers for us, and we study all their information to gain and glean what we can. But in the end, we kind of do our own thing. We do what we do it well, and we really care for others. Starbucks wants to turn you in a space as quickly as possible, minimal seating, and just turn the seats as quickly as possible. We're more about putting in a lot more seating and asking you to come and enjoy the space. So that's probably just a slight difference in how we operate.
Yeah, yeah. And I know Starbucks is obviously always competing for all those locations, and I know you've gone up against them a few times, and some you win, some you lose. But yeah, having a competitor like Starbucks is a positive thing because they have blazed that trail, and you can do things differently. And coffee is a great example of people 20 years ago, even as you were starting, I'm sure told you we're already too saturated. So there's too many stores already. And I'm sure if we looked at your market areas that you're in, like you said, there are 3 times the amount of stores and probably room to double it again in some markets. So it is fascinating. And I think you've embraced competition and looked at them as an ally, not necessarily as a foe, so to speak. So I enjoy that. And I think that. Last question. You and I are both not strangers to trials and tribulations. What characteristics should people keep in mind as they're going through like the situation that we're in, difficult times? What general advice would you have for people?
Wow.
I spun that one on you. I didn't tell you I was going to say that one, so I'm sorry. But
well,
going through tough times is part of life. And so, what advice or what characteristics should people keep in mind?
I'm asked that question a lot, and Troy, you and I have both faced challenges, life-threatening challenges, in addition to financial challenges. And, it's how we've gone through those and what we've learned through those. The number one thing that I point to a lot with folks is that it's all a matter of perspective. And people are looking at this as the worst thing that they have ever gone through without the perspective of thinking that, this is probably not that bad. And there's a lot worse things that could happen, especially in the financial world. And, I've gone through a number of trials financially, and I put this in a completely different perspective. I get excited during these times. I love the challenge of doing something different and new and trying to figure it out. And it kind of creates your mind. You got to think daily how things are going to work. And then in the back of your mind, you got to think, well, wait a second, I can't touch that, or I can't, oh, look out, so it's really interesting, but it's all a matter of perspective. And if you can keep that in mind and realize that people have gone through much worse and survived, then I think you can put this in perspective and realize we'll get through this.
Yeah, I love it. Amen. I agree. I love it. I think perspective is so important. And I've told people before on this show and others, when you're fighting for your life or you write your final letter to your wife and kids, as I have, it changes you. And it does put a different perspective on what we're going through or a financial situation or whatever it might be. I think being adaptable, flexible, and positive attitude, super important. So, Wes, thank you so much. I appreciate you. I appreciate your business, and I only wish the best for you moving forward. And thank you for joining me today on CREE's Deal Junkie. So thank you.
Truly my pleasure. I enjoyed it immensely.
Great. So with that, we will go ahead and just wrap up here. This has been Troy. Just if you have if you're curious about where we're at, you can go to creecalculator.com. The work that you do today will definitely prepare you for tomorrow. So make sure that you are preparing yourself for those opportunities that are out there. And you can also go to creebroker.com to get our full course and all of our package and everything else. And we have had today Wes Herman with us with Woods Coffee. You can go to woodscoffee.com if you want to see more about their store and the image and what they've got going on. And that's it. So thank you again, and you take care, Wes. See you later.
Thank you.
Okay.